Sacagawea. Sorry, you guys. Sorry. I touched the button I wasn't supposed to touch. So hopefully you'll all come back and see me here, and I've got it all screwed up here. It's all good. It's all good. See? That's what you get for live, people. It's live. It is live. I know. Thank you, Scott. And look at me. I'm seeing a reverse. I'm looking at a reverse, so I go to like this to cut my bangs, and I'll get the wrong way. Oh, see, I already touched my hair. Anyhow, let's pretend like all that never happened, because that's what you do in life, is you make mistakes and then you rebound. You don't just go running away from them, okay? So anyhow, today we are talking about the cool vintage places that are in Mississippi, the state of Mississippi. Quick just recap for anybody who I lost and people are coming back. Started in Maine back in March. Every day I show up, I cover a state, the cool vintage retro places in the states. And today is the official time when we hit the very last state, Mississippi. You can see it right there. I got a little close-up thing. You can probably right there. And we are going to talk about the cool vintage places in the state of Mississippi. That is the last state on the east side of the Mississippi River. And then next week, next Thursday, we'll start on this side of the country, you know? As we say in the biz, I'm chunking it down, okay? One state at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. Do the best you can with what you have, etc. Oh, speaking of next week, not that you care, but I do, because I'm looking at how I touched my hair and now my forehead is all sweaty. I'm getting a haircut next week. It has been 17, 18, 19 weeks since I got my haircut. You remember in all the old TV pictures of me, how short my hair is or was. And now I've just got so much of it that I don't know what to do. But my guy, Phil, love him so much. We're going to be wearing masks, gloves, the whole thing. But I'm getting some hair chopped off. So we'll see what it looks like next week, okay? So let's talk about Mississippi. So here we go. For those of you who are not familiar with the shapes of the states, that's what it looks like in my humble. So we did Alabama. We've done Tennessee. We'll probably do, I'm thinking next week we're going to do Louisiana, and then maybe Arkansas, AK, not Alaska, Arkansas. And Retro Road Husband and I have actually visited, we actually stayed a night. We stayed in, where are we? Jackson. We stayed in Jackson on our way to Austin, Texas a number of years ago to go to, South by Southwest. Almost said Solid Sound because that was like this past weekend. And a lot of cool things. I will tell you that I would go back to Jackson. I think that might be a nice like weekend stop, but there's some other stuff here. So I'm going to kind of start north and go south. Don't follow me. I'm lost too, I think is one of my tacky license plates. Like God is my co-pilot and keep on trucking. So anyhow, so up in the northeast corner of Mississippi, there's an adorable place called Boram's Drugstore. It's in Corinth, and it was established in 1865, and it is a drugstore. But you know, I don't just tell you to go to drugstores that don't have that just have, you know, pharmacies and stuff. But I love drugstores that have counter service, that they have you know, a soda fountain, and especially if, again, I'm a wicked sweet tooth. But I also know people, or maybe you want something savory. So they've got stuff, and here, check this out. They are famous for something called the Slug Burger. Now, I was a bit afeared when I read about it that I was going to have to tell you that you're going to have to eat a burger made out of slugs. Don't worry, it's not that. What it is kind of an affordable burger that was popular in the Depression era, and they called it a slug burger because it only cost a nickel, a slug. So that's what is famous at Boram's Drugstore in Corinth, Mississippi, in the northeast in the northeast corridor. So it's beef filler. That's why it's cheap. Pickles, onions, and mustard, and it seems like the thing to do. Don't you love that when you're traveling and you're like, probably would never do this at home, but I'm in the home of the slug burger, gonna eat myself a slug burger. So you eat, when you're on the road, you eat different things that you normally wouldn't at home, and then you can tell people, oh my gosh, I was in Mississippi and Maud Betty told me to eat a slug burger. I ate a slug burger, so you're welcome in advance. I apologize. It's actually, I get a bit of a breeze here. I remember, Debbie, last time, it's great you've been to Jackson, and I remember you saying that you could hear our wind chimes. So I think it's kind of nice because I've got the garage door out. That's why I've got such wonderful light coming in. Up in that area of Mississippi is also the only, here I'll qualify it, the only vintage drive-in movie theater in the entire state. The entire state really only has one drive-in movie theater, which is crazy because it's so warm out there for such long times. We're up here in the Northeast. We've got states that have multiples, right? So it's the Luca Drive-In in Luca, Mississippi. That's the vintage one. But the neat thing is when I was starting to do my research, I discovered that I think it was just last year, and thank goodness, in this time of COVID, that it opened up. There's kind of a do-it-yourself, I don't know if it's a putting up a sheet on the side of the garage or whatever, but the this is when you get a little punny, Hacienda Ranch, which is an RV and trailer park that you can go visit. The Hacienda Ranch Drive-In in Poplarville, Mississippi, has just opened up their own drive-in movie theater. I think it cost a couple of bucks to get in. Social distance, please. Again, reminder to you and to me that even though I talk about all of these places as if they are open right now, I'm not going to mention anything that looks like it's permanently closed. And sadly, when I was looking at the Google map that I always create for places, a number of pins I had to take off because places have been permanently closed, which is a bummer. However, I'm speaking about these places as if they are open right now, but do your due diligence, do your research whenever you're planning on going to travel, and see if they are open because of what is going on health-wise, see what restrictions they have, see what good things they have in place to keep us all safe and healthy. So I just to say that as a reminder, I will speak of these places as if you could start heading there right now, but maybe you can, but just do your research, okay? That's Mod Betty, wanting all of my Retro Road Mappers to stay safe and healthy and alive, people alive. So that's what I'm doing, okay? So kind of south, and this was neat for me too, because I will admit one of the reasons I started Retro Road Map was because I did not learn the states when I was growing up. Yes, I know, how embarrassing that I went to a fine school, and I swear we learned the 6 states of New England, and then we spent a year and a half on the Stamp Act or something, or the Bicentennial. I know I'm dating myself when I mention Bicentennial. But here's the deal. I learn so much better when I have a visual in front of me. So when I'm oh, okay, so for example, right here, I believe, right here is Tupelo, Mississippi. And now it kind of makes sense that I'm doing it backwards, but that Memphis is right there. So Tupelo is, it's oh, now that makes sense why Tupelo, which is the birthplace of Elvis Presley, not Elvis Costello, but Elvis Presley, born in Tupelo. So there's a couple of places I want to mention there, but when you see it geographically, then it makes sense that it's oh yeah, then he went to Memphis. I'm going to Memphis, Tennessee, going to Graceland. So he didn't even move that far from home when he bought his big mansion. Isn't it crazy to see it when you're when you see it on the map? It just makes such a difference to me. So that's why I'm showing you the map. And I called it Retro Road Map. Duh. Anyhow, so Tupelo. So the neat thing is, I love vintage theaters when they're open. Most of them started as movie theaters, and many of them now maybe do movies, but mostly do live acts. There's a place called the Lyric Theater in Tupelo, open since 1912, still open, again, COVID caveat. ELO. I didn't even get that, Jeff Cooper. Clever. Wicked clever. Also, Jeff, what you also missed was me turning off the camera mid-stream, so I've started a bit early, but you also missed maybe, and I'll let everybody know, so tune into this. So see this background here? You guys, because you are cool and you are here for these Retro Road Map Facebook Lives, this background is going to look very familiar to you when I share the link to Retro Road husband Cliff Hillis. He's going to do a song out here, probably Route 66. We're going to do a video of it and post it. So you guys will be like, oh yeah, I know where that is because I've been hanging out with Maud B in the summer office. So we're talking about music. We're talking about Elvis Presley. There's a place in Tupelo called Johnny's Drive-In. I love it. They spell it Johnnnies because that's how they spelled my dad's name. His name was Johnny Lennon, when he was a little kid. It is an all-American diner serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And here's the thing that got me all excited, because you know how much I love to get a list and check them off. And, you know, I mean, hello, look at me, checking things off, breaking things down, collecting them all, like those things that you would get in the, you know, the cereal boxes. So Johnny's Drive-In is also one of 12 sites in Elvis's formative years that are marked in Tupelo with bronze plaque on the Elvis Presley driving trail. So there's a couple of driving trails you can do in Mississippi. One of them is in Tupelo. So if you want to collect them all and go revisit, you can visit also Elvis Presley's Tupelo, the birthplace. Tiny, tiny little shack. Probably, I don't even know, maybe as big as our garage. Humble beginnings, as we all do. And then look what he did with his life. So anyhow, that's what you can do in Tupelo. I'm sure there's other things, but that's enough. That's like a little taste. And then I never want to give you everything, because then you won't have the fun of learning and discovering, because that charge you get when you discover something, it's like, oh, look at this. You know, you're like a cat who gives somebody, like, look what I found. Or you're like, I struck gold. Or mama, look what I found a penny. Who doesn't love that feeling? So I don't want to deny you the feeling of discovery yourself. I just want to give you a few tips to encourage you to let you know that if you head in a certain area, you're going to find some fun stuff. So that's Tupelo, Mississippi. There is a place called, in that general area, because we're kind of going in a general north to south area, New Albany, Mississippi. There's a place called Latham's Hamburger Inn, INN. Began as Stag's in the early 1930s. They're using the same recipes that they do. It's now across the street, and it is the only restaurant to have survived the test of time. Little bar stools, you know, counter stools, a lot of counter stools. Such a sucker for the counter seating. And how neat is that? If anybody saw my pictures, this is how I digress a lot, but it's like having a conversation, and we haven't seen each other in a week, so I got a lot to tell you. I've got so much to tell you. How when I went to Signs 5 and Dime in Quakertown, PA last week, how clever it was of them. How clever it was for them to physically remove some of the tops of the stools so that you could only comfortably sit at the counter 6 feet away from each other. So I love counter seating, and I love it when people are they're taking this challenge of these times, and they're saying, I'm not going to let it get me down. I am going to try something creative to help me get through this. And I absolutely love that. So that is Latham's Hamburger Inn in New Albany. Now here's a neat little town that I didn't even have on my radar, but so thank you so much again for all of you for tuning in, because you give me an opportunity. You kind of give me that push that I have to research some of these states that usually I would only research if I was driving to or through them, you know, because it's almost like, why would I do that if I'm not going? But now that we're all safely at home during this summer, so we can all live for the next many decades, it is fun to kind of virtually go on this road trip. So you gave me the opportunity to discover Water Valley, Mississippi. So Water Valley, Mississippi, I didn't know it from Adam, as my grandmother would say, but there is a place that I actually found out about it because I heard about a cool bookstore called the Violet Valley Bookstore that in 2019, Oprah Magazine mentioned it being one of the top 20 independent bookstores in the nation. Well, you know me. I love to read. I have written books. I am writing a major book. So bookstores and Maud Betty were kind of like this. So when I heard about that, that was neat. And then the cool thing was, and I love when this happens. Does this ever happen to you? Do you look at places on Google Maps and you look at the street view just to see what it looks like on the outside? So maybe if you're driving, you know what it looks like. Well, I was looking at the street view, and then I always kind of take a little pan to the left. That's my left. To the right. That's my right. and see what's around. And then right next to this grocery store is a place called the BTC Old Fashioned Grocery. Now, I admit I forgot to find out what BTC stands for, but maybe when you go there you can find out. And it is not really wicked old. I mean, the structure itself is old and the concept is old because it's a grocery store, but it hasn't been open. It's only been open since 2011 when somebody named Kagan Coughlin rescued the building and turned it into a wonderful place for you can get groceries, old-fashioned groceries, but also there's a restaurant, like a cafe, so you can go get a nice little thing, and their food gets raves, people. So if you want to get some food that somebody else has always made you, I prefer the food that somebody else has already made because I do not care to cook, and my cooking is uninspired. It's pretty much toast and tea. But really good stuff. You can get groceries, antiques and junk. So it's one of those places that's like an old school place with a new heart that somebody has come and salvaged the bones of this place. So that's the BTC Old Fashioned Grocery in Water Valley, Mississippi, right next door to the Violet Valley Bookstore. And then here's a cool thing. So I learned about that. This place hadn't existed in my head until I learned about it. I put a dot on my map. I think it's like up, I don't know, it's up here maybe, don't quote me on it. But then, in further research, I had learned about a place called Turnage Drugstore. I also found out that that is within, when I went to go put my pin on my map, I said, well, lo and behold, this is within, like, streets of the BTC Old Fashioned Groceries. Turnage Drugstore has been open since 1905. It is still ran by the Turnage family. They've got a gift shop, but they also have an old-fashioned soda fountain. So again, here's a place where I didn't know about it. Water Valley, Mississippi. Sorry, I just, I didn't know about it, but now I do. And now I'm excited that the next time we're in that area, I will know where to go. And so will you, because you heard about it from me. So how cool is that? Now, a little bit over towards the western part of the northern part of Mississippi is a couple of places I want to mention because this was also fascinating to me. There's a place called the Blue and White Restaurant, very retro. It's been open since 1937. Definitely like an old school place. It used to be a tobacco and newsstand. It used to be Greyhound bus stop, full service restaurant. Now it prepares traditional Southern cooking, which we're in the South, so you're going to get the Southern cooking with family recipes. So that is the Blue and White Restaurant in Tunica, or however you pronounce it. And I'm not even pronouncing it with a Southern accent. So, they also have early morning fare, homemade donuts and cinnamon rolls. So you gotta love that. So I thought that was so neat. I just saw Craig Nye. Yes, please go back to Signs. I am so glad that you went there Christmas shopping with me, because that's what I love to do is get people to not just hit like on the Facebooks, but then get off of your duff like we all do. We need that little motivation to go to the places that we really want to go to. And so much of it is literally just getting from inaction to action. So I'm so glad I motivated you to go to. That was a lot of fun. And hey, check it out. I went to a place near there and I got some flamingos. So you and we've got some new flamingos going on. So here's the other place I want to, Tunica. Thank you, Jeremy. Tunica, like Banaka. See, again, when I have when Hollywood comes a-calling and they're like, Maud Betty, you're just so great, we want to have a TV show, then I will have somebody whose job it is to make me not mispronounce. Yeah, not mispronounce, to pronounce them correctly. I will pronounce all of the places correctly, I promise you. Because I come from a place, Massachusetts, where we know when people don't know where they are, when they're asking for Peabody or Gloucester or Dedham, things like that. Oh, Jeremy, wonderful. Well, I saw you just tuned in. Just so you know, I will be archiving this because we're about halfway through or so. All of the videos that I've been doing since March 17th are not only on the Retro Roadmap Facebook page, but they are also on the Retro Roadmap YouTube channel. So you can watch it from the beginning and catch up on any of the things I got. So, oh, that's awesome, Debbie. Thank you so much. Well, I'm getting distracted like I do at any good party because I want to talk with everybody, but I got to make sure that I get all the places for Mississippi. One thing I also want to add, since it's lovely that people, you see, like right now, Glenn Wells, you freaking rock. I so don't want to be the change, maybe. I can't look at it because I already disconnected myself. And I do, be the change. Maud Betty is so being about the change in the world, people. So Glenn Wells, I love that you looked that up for me because I can't Google and talk at the same time. I love that you posted that. And I love that now everybody else in the comment section, both now and when this is on the video tab of this page, will know that. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. Also, if anybody else has any places that they like in Mississippi particularly that I may mention or not mention or whatever, feel free to chime in. Like you're in the don't just sit there and quietly, watch me. Interact, because these are your people. The people in the comment section are people who, just like you and me, who love these kind of places. So thank you so much, Glenn. I love that so much, and now I so want to go to there. I want to go to there, as Tina Fey's daughter once said. But here's a neat place that I want to make sure I tell you about, because I just thought this was so fascinating. So around the area of the Blue and White restaurant in Tunaga is a place called the Rest Haven. Now, it's not a rest home. It's not a, camper resort. It's actually a restaurant in Clarksdale, Mississippi, the Rest Haven. And what I found fascinating about this is when I was looking up some of the famous foods or interesting foods from Mississippi, one of the things that they mentioned was kibbe. Now, kibbe is a southern, it's a Middle Eastern kind of thing, like ground chickpeas, deep fried, all that. And lo and behold, this place in Mississippi where you think all you're going to get is fried food, or not fried food. I mean fried food, but like southern food. There is a place that, because people came over from the Middle East to find a better life here years ago, they started creating the foods of their lands. That's how we got pizza here. That's how we got tacos. That's how we got pubs, because I'm Irish, okay? So people from the Middle East came over to Mississippi to start a better life, and they wanted that taste of home, because we all do, and they started making grape leaves and all sorts of Middle Eastern things along with the southern food. So if you ever want to get Middle Eastern food in a vintage location, go to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and go to the Rest Haven. And isn't that just such a neat reminder of the the melting pot, the Great American Melting Pot. I hope everybody's going to watch, Schoolhouse Rock this weekend with the 4th of July and Great American Melting Pot and, the Declaration of Independence in 1776. That's how I learned here's the deal. We didn't learn the states. I had to learn about the stuff from the cartoons, people. But thank God I did, because it's so much easier to learn things from songs and whatnot. So the end of all music record stores. See, I didn't know about that. Yeah. Javi, I am Irish by way of Boston on both sides of my family. So I've got a Boston accent and an Irish. At this point, it's getting to be a big Irish face. And no, those are not. I think they are kind of like the Woodstock chimes. They're actually chimes we bought for Cliff's parents, and when they passed away, we took them back to the house, and every time they ring, they remind me of them. So, but I do love the Woodstock chimes. Maybe when I go to Woodstock, I'll buy some chimes. Okay, where were we? Oh, that's right, Mississippi. Mississippi. I did learn how to spell it. So, Rest Haven. Oh, also, in Clarksdale, again, this is the thing that I didn't know about the Rest Haven until I was doing my research now, but there's a place called the Shack Up Inn in Clarksdale that somebody told me about years ago. And I took my Google map and I put a pin on it, wherever it is. I think it's right around here. Because check this out. The Shack Up Inn is for blues, people who love the blues music. And even if you just like blues, you like the Aquas maybe. It is the Mississippi Delta. And it's a place where you can actually stay. It's a few miles from the crossroads. So put a chicken bone at the crossroads. And you can go and you can immerse yourself in the history of the musicians that used to be there, but you can also stay. I know this sounds a bit nutty to some people who like glamour and things, but you can stay in a renovated sharecropper's shack. And that just gives you the vibe of, This is where these people that made some amazing music that is like the basis of so much music that is distinctly American, that they were sharecroppers. They were working in the cotton fields, so you get to see a cotton gin. You can find a mechanized cotton picker, and you can cotton picking. Now wait just a cotton picking minute. I wonder what a cotton picking minute is. I bet it's a short amount of time because you'd want to pick a lot of cotton in a minute so you get paid. Anyhow, that's the Shack Up Inn in Clarksdale. And if you're into the blues, the other thing I wanted to mention, I think I have it down here further, but there's a cool thing. Remember I mentioned there was like the Elvis tour, the Elvis route you could take and, you know, see all the things with the, you know, the historic plaques for him. Mississippi also has two musically related tours you can do. One is the Mississippi Blues Route. So it's all these wonderful, Glenn Wells, you know what I'm talking about when I say those historic markers, you know, the historic signs that have the stories on them, and they commemorate the different important places for people in the blues music. And they also have one for country music. And I bring that up because in this general area, there's one. Now, I am a fan of music that is derived from all types. I like the music I like. And so I like some blues, I don't like some blues. I like some everything, and I don't like some everything. It's whatever my ears go to my heart. But check this out. One of the markers, I believe it's in the country music, not the blues music, is the Bobbie Gentry marker. Now, if anybody knows about Bobbie Gentry, fascinating woman, fascinating. She is a mysterious, she is alive, we think. She has disappeared from where we are. Maybe she's out growing tomatoes on a nice day like today. She's just chilling. But back in the 60s and early 70s, she was a hot number, and she's the famous songwriter and performer of Ode to Billy Joe. Not Ode to Billy Joel. Ode to Billy Joe. Because Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge, and there's a marker at the Tallahatchie Bridge for Bobbie Gentry, and where you can learn about that. That's June 3rd, I think. I have it on my calendar. This year I forgot because of the COVID. Such a hauntingly interesting song and such a wonderful, interesting woman. So Google her. There's a great book, actually, due to poor wireless connections. All right, I'm going. We know somebody who wrote a book about Bobbie Gentry, so Google Bobbie Gentry and Tara Murtha and get her book. Moving right along, so there's a place in Greenwood, New Jersey called Lusco's. And not only are they an old-timey place that they've been around for more than 80 years, but I thought this was fascinating. So there are a lot of old school places that have been renovated and whatever, but this had such an interesting little twist to it that I had to share. So Lusco's in Greenwood started out as a grocery store, and then it started out as a restaurant, and then during Prohibition, when you weren't supposed to be, you know, drinking alcohol, they made it so that all of their dining tables are in these little kind of cubby holes with a curtain, so nobody can see in. Now, crazy enough, that might be beneficial now during the COVID times, and not necessarily for the not seeing in, because back in the day, nobody wanted to see if anybody was like, if you were drinking the hooch that you weren't supposed to, nobody got to see that. Now it is still a restaurant, great steaks and seafoods, and they still have the little places where you can sit down and pull the curtain if you like, and it's still BYOB, as we like to call it, bring your own bottle. So they don't serve the alcohol, but you can bring it with you. And I just thought that was fascinating. So that's Lusco's in Greenwood. Before I get out of this kind of general area of Mississippi, I also want to mention this because I thought this was fascinating too. This is a little bit more, this may be on the mid-century mid-mod map of Mississippi, which I didn't see anything. So maybe Jeremy, if you know any mid-century modern places of note, you know, email modbetty at retroroadmap.com. But here's a place called McCarty's Pottery in Marigold, Mississippi. It opened up in 1954, concentrating on artistic and functional pieces like platters and casseroles and lamps and things by Lee and Pup McCartney. They were using local clay and doing really interesting designs, and it's still open to this day. So if that's something you want to get, like a souvenir, and you don't want it to have been made in a foreign country, you want to actually have a souvenir that was made in the state that you're visiting, maybe go to McCartney, listen to me, I'm all Beatley, McCarty's Pottery. Go to McCarty's Pottery, in Marigold, Mississippi. I'm going to check that out when we go down there. So, all right, moving right along. Oh, 2 places, and I think a couple of people who are in the little comment section will dig this, because I'm going to talk about an historic carousel. So, Meridian. Now, Meridian, we're a little bit, if anybody knows the geography, you realize I kind of, gave us into a different place, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned 2 places in Meridian, because then I have a bunch of places I want to talk about in Jackson, and then I get some foods to talk about, so I got a lot to cover. So there's a Denzel historic carousel in Highland Park in Meridian. It was manufactured in 1896 for the 1904 St. Louis Expo, and it was actually made here in Pennsylvania. It's a National Historic Landmark, and it is one of the few two-row Denzel menagerie carousels in the world. So if you love vintage carousels, merry-go-rounds, like I love vintage carousels and merry-go-rounds, so does my mother. We both share that love. The Denzel at Antique Carousel at Highland Park in Meridian. Now, again, doing my research, that had been on my map for a while. Doing my research for today, I discovered that, again, just a few stops over is a really cool old theater, the Temple Theater for the Performing Arts, that started as a shrine temple theater. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's one of those, like, it was built in 1928, like a Moorish revival, very ornate on the inside, you know, because that's when it was a delight for anybody to go to the movies, and it was kind of getting you out of, you know, whatever you were doing and kind of giving you a new look, you know, surrounding you by a new thing. So if you go to Meridian, I bet there's a place you could eat there. I didn't find any restaurants because I didn't really look. But you can maybe see if they give tours of the theater, or maybe see if there's a show, and then ride on the carousel. Now, we drove through Meridian past it because we were going to Jackson. We're going to Jackson. I think we were listening to that song. Go on to Jackson, wreck your health. You know, June and Johnny Cash, Carter Cash, classic song. Maybe I'll put it in the comments myself. And anyhow, we ended up staying. This was fun, let me tell you, because this was so organic how this happened. So we were on our way to Austin, Texas, and so we thought Jackson, Mississippi, we will stop there. We got in pretty late at night, but we stayed at a really cool hotel downtown. Now, it is a chain. It's the Hilton Garden Inn. But the thing I love about it is it's downtown, and it's a cool historic hotel. So it was very nice and clean and open and a bit fancy, frankly, for what we were used to, but it was affordable. And then the neat thing is when we woke up in the morning and we realized where we wanted to go, we were within walking distance of where we had planned to have lunch. And the other place that this hotel is in walking distance in is the train station, the Amtrak station. And that gave me the idea, like, wouldn't it be fun to, like, take the train and go someplace to, like, you know, for the weekend, like, take the train down to Jackson, Mississippi, and then get out and then see what's around there and stay in that hotel. And then you can, like, walk to the Mayflower Cafe, which I'm about to tell you about. But then you could also just take an Uber car, you know, or the bus or something, and go to some of the other places I'm going to tell you about. So sometimes you don't even need to be on a road trip to be on a road trip. But I really want to tell you about the Mayflower Cafe in Jackson, because that is one of the few remaining really old school places in that town. There are some that I will tell you about that are in varying degrees of vintageness, but I love the Mayflower, and we were able to eat there, and it was so much fun and so stepping back in time. It has been continuously operated since 1935. They've got vinyl booths, memorabilia from their time being open, and they're primarily a fish place. So the fun thing is we got fish there, big portions. They serve them sometimes in the little tin, like a little tin tray that has the dividers in it. And the famous thing they have there, very good food, is a dressing called comeback sauce. And I was like, again, I'm somewhere I haven't been because I have no idea what this is. And this is basically, I've looked it up so you guys know, it's a spicy, creamy concoction a cross between Thousand Island dressing and remoulade. And it is a menu mainstay of restaurants kind of across the way. Salad dressing, green tomatoes, whatever, comeback sauce, and they made it so that you would dip it in there and you would want to come back to the restaurant. So you'll look for that. If you see that on a Mississippi menu, try it out. But if you're at the Mayflower, definitely get that. It's got like, you know, mayo, Worcestershire sauce. Everybody's got a little bit different. And allegedly it was invented in the 1920s at a place in Jackson that's not there anymore. Greek restaurant, they used to be called the Rotisserie. And I first had it at the Mayflower. So the Mayflower, you should have it there too. Oh, you know what? Thank you, Susan. I will be, Cliff is a fan of Lucinda, and I will let him know that some of the things in Mississippi, maybe he could do, like when we hit the road, when everything's safe, we're going to go to all these states that I'm talking about, because I am getting just as charged up to get on the road and see places and people in 3D. But I want to wait till I do it safely, because I want to live. I do not want to get sick with the COVID. I hope you don't either, so please be safe. That's a public service announcement, because Maud Betty cares. Now back to traffic and weather. So here's a neat place. So I usually don't tell you about places where you can go and just look at it, but I thought it was such a fascinating building, and if you're going to be spending some time in Jackson, Mississippi, definitely check out the former Greyhound station. It was originally built in 1930s, and it is now the office for an architecture firm, but it's this fabulous Art Deco structure, streamlined modern with the curved walls and the glass brick. And it's also important because the Freedom Riders, it's part of that kind of, you know, sad history of our country, but an important thing to remember that there was a time when people could not ride any public transportation, you know, sitting next to somebody of a different color. So it's a good place to go and a wonderful building to check out. Along those lines also is, I don't typically send you to museums or anything, because you can go to those all the time and you can find out history. I try to find places that you normally wouldn't know about. There you go, neighbor. It's a nice day. Anyhow, Medgar Evers Home Museum. Now, the thing I love about this is not only is it where Medgar Evers lived right before, you know, sadly at the time that he was assassinated, but it's also a 1950s home, and it's also like a nice little, cute little aqua house that you can go in, learn about some history, not only of civil rights movement in the United States, but also it's been pretty much preserved to what it looked like when he lived there. Now, it's only open by appointment only, so do some research so you're able to go into there, but it looks like a really fascinating place, and it's always good to kind of, you know, remember the different parts of the history. And it's also like, it looked like it was a really neat vintage house. Not a Lustron, but just a little cool vintage 1950s ranch, which I love. Couple of places to eat. If you didn't go to the Mayflower, or maybe you did, but now you're a bit peckish and maybe it's dinner. Two places I want to recommend to you. One's kind of fancy, which looks kind of neat, and the other one could be fancy if you go to the back room. So what I'm talking about are two places. One is Walker's Drive-In in Jackson. Now you think Walker's Drive-In, a drive-in? It's not really a drive-in. It started out as one. So from the outside, you see a great neon sign. They've got this adorable thing, but on the inside, it's really kind of a world-class restaurant. Upscale dining in kind of a cool, funky atmosphere. So if you have a desire to splurge, or you just like to eat like that all the time, Walker's Drive-In in Jackson. Now, if you want to go, maybe that's your style, or maybe you're just not hungry or whatever, how about Brent's Drugstore? So this is the thing I love about this, is again, when we were going to Mississippi, we didn't know about this place, but it is a drugstore. It's been open since 1946. They have counter service and tables, and they serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you can go there for any one of those and get like a little pimento cheese sandwich or something that, like, I always imagine like sitting there with your grandmother or my grandmother having like an ice cream soda and a little kind of petit four kind of dainty little sandwich made with, I don't know if they cut off the crusts, but like just a little sandwich, It's like the Goldenrod in Wells, Maine. Little sandwiches. Anyhow, but what the neat thing is, so that is Brent's Drugs, but in the back of Brent's Drugs is a place called the Apothecary. Now, remember how I was talking about that place up near Clarksdale? Lucio's, I think it was. I'm going to mispronounce it. Let me see if I can find it. Can't find it. Lusco's. And the whole notion of, you know, prohibition and nobody's supposed to be drinking, but everybody's drinking. So Brent's is in the back of the Apothecary. They call it Apothecary, and it's a cocktail bar that you can get a nice classic cocktail. And it's totally old school in the back, and what a fun little thing to go like, I don't know if you have to say like Joe sent me. You might be able to just walk through, check it out, but that to me is so much fun. So those are 2 places in Jackson. And then one more place in Jackson that I have not been, and I will admit, being the baby of an eater that I am, I leave the adventurous eating to Andrew Zimmern and, you know, God rest his soul, Anthony Bourdain, because they both went to this place. This is the Big Apple Inn in Jackson. So it's been around since the 1930s, and it is not an inn. I don't know why they call these places inns. I'm sure there's some history about it, but it's a small little place. But they are famous for their pig ear sandwich. Yeah, pig ear. So they cook the ears, put them on a bun, put slaw mustard and homemade hot sauce on them, and yeah, that is an old-fashioned recipe from the 1930s. And Anthony Bourdain, Andrew Zimmer made it. If you are an adventurous eater and you want to eat adventurous foods, by all means, go at it. But Maud Betty, I'm always packing the Tums and, you know, the Pepto, because some things just don't agree with my delicate stomach. But go for it. So that is the Big Apple Inn in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, speaking of dinner, I had to include this. There's a place called the Dinner Bell Inn in Macomb, M-C-C-O-M-B, like a comb. And it's been around since the 1920s it was started as a place where people lived, like an inn that served dinner and stuff. But check this out. They're used to doing, like, kind of serving the whole table. So they have these humongous lazy Susans in the middle of the table that you put the food on, and you can spin it around, kind of like at a Chinese restaurant, like Han near us has. And I love that. They're famous for their fried eggplant, fried chicken and dumplings, all that food. So that's good. Now, I want to make sure I'm keeping up on the time, because I do have some really good foods to mention. But I will mention as we go south. So now we're almost heading towards the smidgy of, what do you call it? Like, what wouldn't be beachfront, maybe? Seaside. This is the Gulf of Mexico. So we're heading south right here. So there's a couple of there's a couple of old theaters here. And I think it was Susan. You mentioned the last time, I can't remember what state it was, maybe it was Alabama, but I was talking about the Sanger theaters. I did not realize that it was like a small, older, what do you call that? Like a chain. Sorry, getting a bit tongue twisted here after talking for an hour almost. A local chain. They've got one still open that's in Hattiesburg, and they've got one that's in Natchez. Biloxi. I apologize, Biloxi. I'm talking about Natchez because remember I was talking about cocktails above a couple of things ago at the Apothecary at Brent's. Well, in Natchez, there's a place called the King's Tavern. It's one of the oldest buildings in town, and actually I'm talking about Natchez, but I think Natchez is way over here. So I started going down here. So don't follow me. I'm lost too. Natchez is over here right before we get into Louisiana, which we will next Thursday when I have my new haircut. So excited. Natchez. The King's Tavern's been around since 1789 or before. And cool place to get a little drink and a little food. And cocktails made with rum from the distillery next door. Now, how fun is that? I love that. I also found out about a place in Natchez because somebody is calling it the biscuit capital of the world. And boy, does Maud Betty love a good biscuit. There's a chef. Her name is Regina Charbonneau, and she helped her hometown earn the official biscuit capital of the world designation. And they supposedly have, and I'm only saying supposedly because it may be canceled for this year, but a biscuit festival, a cook-off, demos, and a crowning of the biscuit queen. Now, if there's anything that makes me hop on the road is the promise of delicious food. So that makes me want to go to Natchez like you wouldn't believe. It's also right on the water. You can get a little, there's like boats and things like that. So that's another place where you could be like, ooh, let's go check out Natchez, Mississippi. So I mentioned the biscuits, and just if, and how's this for a random connection? This is how my mind works. So I mentioned biscuits, and I at one point, I don't know if they're still on here, but I had a couple of Brits, and I say that most lovingly because we know the Brits from the orchestra crew, and there. So in England, they call what we call cookies, they call biscuits. What we call biscuits are like the nice fluffy things that you put tons of butter on and you put in with your chicken and stuff like that. But I found out, I just was speaking about American biscuits. Well, now I will talk about English biscuits, because butter cookies, it's the only one official food of Mississippi. Mississippi is known as the Magnolia State, just as an FYI. And butter cookies are the official, it's like the only official food. I thought that was very interesting. So if you ever want to be like, I want to eat all the official foods in a state, then you can have some butter cookies in Mississippi. Speaking of Mississippi and delicious sweet things to eat, this is one you may be more familiar with because it actually has Mississippi in its title, which is Mississippi Mud Pie. Now, in doing some research, I have discovered that there are almost as many recipes for this pie and variations of it as there are people who like to cook it and people who like to eat it, because they often have, basically it's chocolate and or flourless cake. Sometimes there's nuts, sometimes there's fudge sauce, sometimes there's meringue or whipped cream. There's got to be a crust because it's a pie, but so delicious. And if you think about it, like they're at the Mississippi River, Mississippi mud, so you know it's going to be dense and rich and delicious. So if you're in Mississippi, and again, you want to be like, I'm on vacation, I've never been here, I also want to get a food that is reminiscent of where I'm from, Mississippi mud pie is something you should check out when you're in Mississippi. Other than that, as far as savory foods go, I know that, and especially this happens right here too, because they've got a little bit of the ocean side, but you've got your po' boys, you've got your catfish is very popular in places in Mississippi. All sorts of, you're getting a little bit of that Creole thing happening with Louisiana right next door. We'll probably talk more about that when we're in Louisiana. But there's one thing, before everybody signs off, I got to share with you because this was crazy. I have never heard of this until I just was doing the research for this. So if anybody has had one of these or has even heard of it, let me know in the comments. A Kool-Aid pickle. A Kool-Aid pickle. Yeah. So here's the deal. A Kool-Aid pickle is a Mississippi Delta creation gone viral, according to the place that I cut and pasted this from. A Koolickle. And it says, and I'll just read it to you because I want to make sure I get the story straight because I still can't quite believe it. A Kool-Aid pickle. Decades ago, kids bought jumbo dills from the convenience store and sprinkled them with Kool-Aid powder for extra zing. Then they say a store owner started brining the dills in Kool-Aid and sugar to sell. And now you can find these colorful cukes in giant mayonnaise jars on the counters throughout the Delta, especially in the double quick convenience stores. Well, I just have to tell you, that's something I never heard of, I never would have expected, but when I go to Mississippi, I will be like, let's stop at a double quick and see if they have a Kool-Aid pickle. They also have a tropical, which is a pickle spear infused with fruit punch powder, and you can also make them at home. But who? You, me, neither, all of us, none of us maybe, would have known about Kool-Aid pickles unless you were cool enough to tune in to Maud Betty doing the Retro Roadmap once a week, covering one state per month, Facebook Live. I thank you so much for doing that because, as I said, this is giving some structure to my world. It is getting me excited to get back on the road. It makes me do some research and get all charged up about deciding of where I want to go. And I hope it's doing the same for you because, you know what? It's really important to focus on the things that make you excited, especially now where who knows what's going on with the world, but so important to figure out where are the places you want to go, what are the things you want to do, and even if you can't get to them now, and I say this with all sincerity, please just be safe now so you can be alive later, okay? Who knows who's going to get sick when? I'm not going to get off the deep end about that, but I will say I would so much rather myself stick close to home, be safe, socially distant, and be around for decades more than get really sick because I decided to go have a cocktail outside and inadvertently somebody who didn't know they were sick and isn't wearing a mask walks by me and then I get the sick. I don't want to get sick, so I'm going to stick close to home so I can go out and spend years, decades traveling and seeing all these wonderful places I've told you about. So thank you so much for tuning in. What else can I tell you? Yeah, so after this, I'm going to get Retro Road Husband set up and he's going to do a video. I think we're going to put it on his Facebook page. I don't know if we're going to do a Facebook Live. I will tell you, Retro Road Mappers will know because you will recognize the backdrop, okay? Happy Independence Day for those of us in the U.S. this weekend. Please, again, be safe and socially distant. If you're going to be social, just be socially safe. For if any of the Brits are on, sorry, we won, haha. It's a little like 4th of July humor there. Monday, I get a haircut. I am so excited about that. So next week when you see me on the Facebook Live, my hair will look different. Hopefully it will look shorter. I don't know if I'm going to go as short as I did. But next Thursday, people, check it out. Next Thursday, we have made it. We have made the journey. We have hit all of these states on the east of the Mississippi. Then next week, next Thursday, we're going to go to the one that's easy to remember because it's shaped like an L, Louisiana. Okay? So, Maud Betty, thanking you again, signing off, saying, what do I want to say? I want to say, you know what? Live your best life. Just drive your life. How to create your best life? By treating it like the ultimate road trip. I don't know. Sounds good. See you next week.